Well, buying a house for most people is the biggest purchase made in a lifetime. Without question, you want to get that purchase right. Here today on Prudent Money is real estate professional Caralee Gurney, here to tell us how to do it the right way. Caralee, welcome to Prudent Money.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Bob.
Well, let's start off by talking about some common mistakes that you see people make when buying and selling a home.
Well, oftentimes people aren't considering what the value is going to be of that home when they're ready to resell it. So that's one really important thing is, are you looking at things that are going to be important for the resale, or are you just looking at the things that you like? And if you're going to be there a long time, it might not matter so much, but if you think you might sell in 5 to 7 years, you might want to consider where you're going to be locating to.
Well, depending on where you live, at any given time, you could be facing a market where the buyers are in control or a seller's market where sellers are in control. I would assume that you have to approach the house buying process a lot different when you're in a hot market. What are some differences in preparing to buy and sell a home in a hot market versus a market where buyers are in control?
Well, if you're the seller, you don't have to do quite as much. Obviously, if you stage the house nicely and you have clean lines and have good curb appeal, you'll probably make a little bit more money on it than you would if you didn't do that. As a buyer, you don't get to be as choosy in a seller's market when it's this crazy market like we've been having. You have to settle a little bit more, and maybe even settle more on the location than you would if you were out buying in a normal market.
Well, obviously, no one should try to buy and sell a house without the help of a realtor. Talk about what you are looking for when you're selecting a realtor.
Well, ethically is one of the things I would look to choosing a realtor. You want to find someone that's going to be honest and upfront with you. I'm not afraid to tell a buyer or a seller what I think and whether or not they should be in a certain area. And I think that's important to have someone that has that honesty and integrity when working with you, because it's really all about the buyer or the seller. It's not about the agent. And that's the kind of person that you need to find to work with you. And then also someone that has experience, knows how to market in this type of market that we have going on these days.
Well, there are a lot of different ways that a realtor can market a house. They can do it as inexpensively as marketing through social media to taking out a full color ad in a real estate magazine. Now, what kind of marketing efforts could a person expect from the realtor, and are there costs associated with any of these marketing efforts that would be charged back to the seller?
That's a good question. And honestly, when I'm working with buyers and sellers, and I think most agents are this way, they pay for that marketing. That's what you're getting with the commission that the seller's paying towards the realtor. So you can expect, depending on the type of house, the size of the house, and the price of the home, different variations in marketing. But today's times, we're seeing more and more online. I mean, buyers and sellers are online looking for that next dream home that they're going to move into. And so we've got to be right there online with them, which coincidentally happens to be a less expensive way to market.
Well, obviously, you want your home to be as marketable as possible. At the same time, you don't want to sink a lot of money into your home while you prep it for sale. What are some non-negotiables when prepping your house, things you definitely want to do, and what are some of the things that you see people do that are, quite frankly, just a waste of money?
Well, I'll be honest with you, the more you do the house, the better. But there are some things that are easy ways to stage your home. And I'm actually a picky realtor when it comes to my clients. I like my houses clean, very clean lines, so very little clutter. None of this costs you any money to have your house clean, your lights on, your things put away, and even having your closets organized. Those are all really important things. People do look in your drawers. They do see if you've left your night guard in the drawer without putting it in a case. Unfortunately, they're going to look at the space that you have, the cabinetry you have, the closets that you have, because they want to know if their things are going to fit in your home. And so you can't really bypass that. Those things need to be done. If you're going to put a little bit of money into it, I do suggest investing in the yard, your landscaping, your drive-up appeal, making sure your front door looks clean and crisp. So waste of money would be overindulging on the type of counters that you're going to put in the home, or spending money painting your cabinets when maybe they don't need it. The most important thing is to have clean lines, have your house staged, and have all the clutter put away. I can give you a good example. It's kind of a fun story about a house I drove by one time. I was listing the house next door, Bob, and I decided, that house next door doesn't look good. And the house next door is going to keep the house I'm listing from selling. And I actually went over there, knocked on the door, and asked the next door neighbor if they'd be willing to let me paint their front door. And I had my painter go over there and paint their front door, and it did make a difference on the appeal of the neighborhood when people drove up.
That's going the extra mile for sure. So, pricing a house is something that you have to get right. Take us through the process of pricing a listing.
This is one of the most important things. There's three things you look at when you're trying to sell a home. It's going to be your location, which you can't change, and it's going to be the condition of your home, which you can or can't change depending on the layout. And then the third thing is the pricing, but the pricing is the most important because whatever you have, whether it's location or condition that you're going to be competing with, you've got to have the right price. And when I price three different ways. I go in, I kind of have some fun with it. I run the neighborhood comparable pricings, and I bring them with me, and I actually go ahead and write a number on the back of those of what I think that house might be listed at. And I'll go through each of those with my clients, and then we'll talk about, okay, we could price it really high, and let's just pray that a buyer comes in and buys your home. Or we could price it low and maybe create a frenzy because, buyers see value in a home that's priced below market. Or we could price it just right. And usually when you price it just right, you seem to sell it in the right amount of time. That's reasonable and most efficient for the client and bring in the most amount of money. So I usually talk about all three of those ways, and honestly, you can go with the latter two, either one of those works.
On some of these real estate shows, you'll often see the realtor price the property, like you were talking about, below market value to start a bidding war. It would seem to me that could be a risky move given that you have listed below market value. And, what if the seller fails to get a bidding war started?
I have to agree with you. Doing the lower cost is a risk. Now, sometimes it works. Oftentimes it works. But you might not get as much money as you'd hope for if those multiple buyers don't come in. So it is a bit of a risk. I pretty much like doing the pricing at the right amount, unless you need to sell and get out of a home in a hurry, and that difference in price isn't going to necessarily make that much of a difference to you.
Well, let's talk about a bidding war from the standpoint of a buyer. In order to get the home, how do you know how much to bid over the sales price?
That's always a guess, to be honest with you, because the market, I've seen anything from $2,000 over a list price to $30,000 over a list price, and you never know how many you're going to have. Now, when I happen to ask an agent and they are willing to tell me how many offers they have, I can kind of gauge going a little bit more when I know I've got 24 or 25 offers to compete with. If you've got that many to compete with, you're going to have to definitely jump on the high end, and you're normally competing with cash offers and investors when you're getting to that point.
Well, let's say that a seller receives a full price offer on a house and the seller is hoping to start that bidding war. How long does the seller have before they can give a yes or no on the offer, while waiting to create a bidding war?
There are a couple things you can do here. Sometimes people will say, all right, I've submitted an offer, and in a normal market, and if you only have one offer, it's etiquette to do it within 24 hours with some kind of response. Now, if you're expecting multiple offers, and when you know you're probably going to have multiple offers, a lot of agents will go ahead and write an MLS if they're accepting offers up until a certain amount of time. So sometimes that might be, okay, it's today, we're putting it on the market Thursday, and we want all offers in by Sunday night. So you can put a time limit on it and let everybody know, or you can respond to that first offer within 24 hours. Or if you get one offer and then you realize some others are coming in, you can extend the time and let them know you've got other offers coming in, and you're going to wait until whatever day and time that you want to.
Now, Caralee, where does the mortgage approval process fall on the timeline of buying a house?
That should be up front, Bob. I don't take any buyers out that don't have a pre-approval letter with them for me to take, because they may fall in love with something and we want to make an offer, and you can't make an offer without that pre-approval. If you don't have it, then we have to wait on it to make the offer, and you may lose the house because of that. So it's best to have all of that done up front. And there are a couple ways you can do it. You can actually get a pre-approval that's just the fast and skinny. So I would say, which is usually done without a credit check. And take that with you, and that gets you in the door. Or you can go ahead and go to the process of having a full approval done, which is usually conditional because you've got to wait until closing to verify all those numbers. But on that conditional approval, it's a further approval. And a lot of times, agents that are looking at offers will tend to lean towards those offers that have a further conditional approval as opposed to pre-approval.
Well, the timing in buying and selling a house can be dicey. In a hot market, what advice would you give to someone who wants to sell their house and buy a house at the same time?
That's a great question, and we do have people that want to do that. We have some people that aren't comfortable making an offer on another house until they've got their house sold. So there are lots of different ways that you can go about it. But if you want to do both at the same time, it's a good idea to go out and find the house you're interested in and see if someone would be willing to do a conditional, not conditional, a contingency on that property, meaning that they would have to sell their house in order to close on that house. And it's just dependent on whether or not an agent will accept that. We're starting to see that they are accepting contingencies more these days than they have been in the past few years. But that one's kind of a gamble. The other thing you can do is sell your house, get your contract on it, and then go out and find a house while you've got a contract on your house. And then that will usually tend to work out as well.
Well, the home inspection can be stressful because as a seller, you never know what might come up. Who actually now selects the inspector?
That's an interesting question. I've used the same inspector on most of my inspections for nearly 6 years now. And typically what I do is I have a list of preferred partners that we use, and I include my home inspector on there, but I always give them the option to use whoever they want. That should be the buyer's choice on who they use. They need to trust that person. But if they don't know of someone, I always am happy to recommend one to them.
Well, in the home inspection process, let's say that the inspector comes up with a list of issues that need to be addressed. Can the buyer expect to get all those issues fixed, or should the buyer be reasonable and pick and choose?
Unfortunately, they can't expect to get everything that they want done. Typically, when I'm talking with a buyer about a home inspection, and I actually contact them ahead of time and let them know this. In fact, I had to do this yesterday. I'll call the buyers and say, hey, we're going to do this inspection, and here's how it's going to go. My inspector will be there, and we'll meet him at the end of the inspection to go over his report. And I'm going to take notes on his report as he goes through it with you. And what I'm looking for are things that are either going to be dangerous or expensive, because we really don't want to wear a seller out. Now, if there are some things that we could throw in there, like maybe there was an electrical issue, and while the electrician's there, he could go ahead and fix something else that's on the list, then we'll go ahead and include that. So really, I'm looking for things that are going to be expensive or dangerous when you're looking at a home inspection report.
Now, Caralee, are there any cases at all when a buyer actually forgoes the inspection process?
Bob, I've only had this happen once, and I highly advised against it. And I'll tell you why. I happened to be on vacation out of town traveling when my buyer wanted to go see a home, and so I sent another agent over there just to show him since I couldn't be there. And he was coming in from California and was just want to have a home inspection because they do things differently in California and don't use a home inspector in his neck of the woods, I guess I should say. But anyway, he didn't have that done. And so when I went back, and I was back in town, and we were going over there to do the walkthrough when he happened to be back from California, it was not in good condition at all. And we really had to fight for some things with the seller at the end. If we had done the home inspection in the first place, those things would have been noted and negotiated up front.
Now, foundation issues, that could be a real deal killer. As a realtor, how do you advise your client if foundation issues are discovered?
Well, this is Texas, so we run across that quite often. And actually, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, as I mentioned, it's really prominent in our area to see that happening. So if the work's been done and there's a 100% transferable warranty, I kind of like to say it's nice to know what you're getting. Otherwise, if you don't know there's any foundation issues and you move in and they show up, you're surprised. You're not surprised when they've already had the work done and you know what to expect. Doesn't mean that you won't go further down the line and something will still kind of adjust with the house, but you know that the majority of the work's been done. And quite frankly, foundation work is really expensive. So if you know it's been done, it's really not that big a deal. If you go into a house and it's really messed up and the seller's not willing to work with you on it, then that's something I'd be more leery of.
Well, Caralee, great information, and I appreciate you taking the time to educate us on the process. As you can tell, the process of buying and selling a home can be tricky. The key to being successful is hiring the right realtor as well as the right mortgage consultant, and most importantly, follow their direction. If you have a question for Caralee, you can always go to prudentmoney.com and use the instant messenger feature to ask your question. Caralee is a Prudent Money contributor for the site and the radio show. Well, for more information about Caralee, you can also go to her website, CaraleeGurney.com.